Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Thank the panel for their testimony today. Mr. Crichton, some consumers have suggested to me to minimize the identifiable data collected, like using partial Social Security numbers or partial driver's license identification. Is this possible for CRAs to do, and would it help better protect consumers from bad actors not authorized to use such data?
Social Security numbers are used as identifiers, and they're important identifiers. They're not used necessarily by financial institutions to authenticate a consumer, but they are used to identify them. And that's important because you have a lot of people in this country, a shocking number really when you look at it, who have similar names, similar dates of birth, similar Social Security numbers. Having the full 9-digit Social Security number is going to be, 10-digit Social Security number is going to be helpful for making sure that we have the right person that we're able to match. And we have an obligation under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to make sure that we're matching the correct data with the correct person.
How about using the driver's license identification? Wouldn't that suffice?
Well, not everyone has a driver's license, first of all. And whether we like it or not, the Social Security number has, in effect, in the United States, become a universal identifier. And it's the one piece of information that crosses over many different databases, particularly in the government.
And you think you have to use all 9?
Yeah, I mean now there are a number of statutes around the country where the minimization of the Social Security number has led to issues. For example, on credit reports today, it's much harder to get to know what all of the liens and judgments you may have against you are. Because in certain courts, you no longer have full Social Security numbers, and so we can't do the full match. And since we can't do the full match, we've just taken off a lot of that data. That degrades the entire credit reporting system. It's a little bit less complete because of that, and that's problematic because if you're a lender, in order to make a safe and sound lending decision, you should know the full set of obligations that a consumer has.
Thank you. Mr. Norton, are there 1 or 2 recommendations you can make for the small to medium-sized companies with limited resources that are most affected in limiting vulnerabilities to criminal hacking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that small businesses obviously are the most at risk. Number one, because they do have those limited resources. Typically, a small business could be, just a handful of people, and what kind of investment do they need to make internally? And I think just starting that conversation amongst the small business is an important step, and just saying, okay, look, we've got X number of computers, X number of people that can access our database. So I think just internally alone, starting there and saying, okay, do we have the appropriate passwords? Do we need some type of encryption on our network that can be publicly available and bought at the marketplace? Do we have a point person within the business, and even if it's a business of 3 people, somebody that's responsible for that, and just kind of having those access controls, I think, is a good starting place for small businesses. And then the larger businesses, I'd say it's a very similar model in terms of maybe you're getting to 50 or 100, but again, starting to carve out, as they look at their out years and starting to develop a strategy of, okay, in this calendar year, whenever their fiscal year starts, this is how much money we're going to start to invest in this particular area, which is just as critical as keeping the lights on or paying the gas bill or paying employee salaries. It has to become part of the day-to-day culture, and I think that's an important conversation they need to have just to start to secure themselves.
Thank you very much. Third question, again, for Mr. Norton or Ms. Fortney. Is there a legitimate worry about criminals using consumers' data to establish a Social Security Administration online account in their name and claiming their benefits? Where or how does a victim go about to protect oneself in that scenario? You both can answer the question. I do have some time. So.
I assume that there are protections there, but this is not an area where I've worked. Yeah, I focus primarily on credit reporting, the credit industry, and other aspects of data security. I would like for Mr. Norton to address.
Yes, please.
Of course, there are some steps you can take in terms of if you believe you have been a victim of some sort of fraud, that contacting the Social Security Administration and letting them know. And there's some I believe there's some things that you can fill out to let them know. I think it's also not the easiest process in the world. I think that's one of the challenges for the individual consumer is the fact that what does somebody do? You know, you can't really necessarily go down to a police station and fill out a police report just the same way that if somebody robbed your home and, you know, took your TV and a couple other things. This is a very different problem, and I think that that's part of the challenge here. And it's just like we were discussing earlier, not everybody can go online and fill out paperwork or, you know, have the ability to even call. And so doing things in a more efficient way and finding ways for, you know, kind of one point of entry, not 19 government agencies for the individual consumer and individual small business, I think would be another important step for the subcommittee to help for the consumers.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Costello, for